Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video. This is the Spyderco Native. Really like this blade, and I wanted to share it with you. If you are just watching this to see, if you should buy one yourself, I've been very impressed, and I'm especially impressed with the serrations, which could be why you're watching this. Spyderco serrations are very good, much better than the ones I've tried from Gerber, Benchmade, even now CRKT. Obviously I like the VEF serrations, but there are other serrations I'm not a big fan of. These are actually really good. I found it very effective. If you're just going to watch this for a minute or so to see whether or not you should buy it, it's a very good knife. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Now let's get into the rest of the review. The Spyderco Native was designed around the human hand to be comfortable and user-friendly, and it definitely is. I've done quite a lot of cutting with this, and even some pretty hard cutting, and not had any issues. I've been very pleased. Really comfortable, and it is small for my collection, okay? If you watch any of my other videos, you'll notice this is definitely on the small side of the knives that I review. But I do really like it, and what I usually use it for is to carry with me when I'm carrying some other larger knife, or maybe some knife that looks a little bit combative or tactical. And so I think maybe I shouldn't take that out in certain situations. I'll bring this with me and pull it out, if I'm standing in line somewhere and need to open a box or package, or if I'm with a bunch of people, I'll use this knife instead, since it's smaller and it almost has kind of a cute look to it, right? It doesn't look very threatening. I know the blade shape maybe a little, but anyway, it's small, and most people aren't going to care too much about it. Now for size and weight, I'll do a comparison with the Benchmade McHenry & Williams, since that's a pretty commonly owned knife. There they are. Let's see, yeah, they're all in frame. So you can see that there's quite a significant difference. This is a fairly small knife. Now this is a fairly big knife as well. 7 inches overall length. The handle is 4 inches, the blade is 3 inches, so it's fairly simple dimensions there. Because of that little choil at the front, you do lose a bit of cutting edge, and you end up with only 2 3/4 inches of cutting edge, which is, it's still not bad. And as I say, I've used this for all kinds of things and not had a big issue with it not doing what I needed it to do. It's been very good performer in terms of usefulness. Let's go on and talk about the blade specifically. The blade is S30V, and it is serrated. Now, one of the things that people seem to be concerned about when it comes to a serrated blade is sharpening. However, I've got my little Lansky whatever sharpening thing here. It has this little rod on it, and the rod is actually for serrations. So if you see, you can fit that into the small serrations pretty nicely. The big ones, it's actually a little bit too small for, but oh, this is actually Smith, not Lansky. Sorry about that. This is Lansky, and this is actually a pretty good system. I really like it. You can take one of these rods, and it does fit into that serration. You see that? So you can actually sharpen this fairly effectively with either one of those methods or both, and it'll work out okay. And I even strop this knife and have no problem stropping it just on a plain leather strop. This side is flat, and this side, what I'll do is I'll do some this way, but then I'll take some time and just individually go through each of the serrations as well. So sharpening is actually not that bad if you have one of those rod sharpening systems, and even if you don't, 19 bucks I think, and maybe $10 or $12. So not expensive at all to add that. I know some people really prefer stones. I find I can get a great edge even with the Lansky. The Sharpmaker would be a little better, but the Sharpmaker would also work to sharpen this. So blade performance is excellent, very sharp, and it's not that bad is what I'm trying to say, to keep sharp. Now let's see, what else do you need to know? Oh yeah, drop point, hollow grind, very effective jimping. The hollow grind is one of the things that makes it such a great slicer, and you do have this little bit of plain edge that allows you to do a few tasks where you may prefer to not have any serrations. The serrations, you will find you'll have to pull every once in a while. It'll bind up, and you will do a little bit of a sawing motion with it, and then usually it'll go right back to slicing. very nicely. So lots of good stuff going on here with the blade. And by the way, one of the things I've got to say about the blade, this is a subjective thing for sure, but doesn't it look cool? That is just a cool looking blade. I'm trying not to get the light reflecting too badly, but wow, is that an awesome looking blade. I love those angles. I love the way the grinds go, you know, with the serrations and the jimping and the spider hole. It just looks really awesome. So that's the blade. Very effective blade, even though it's shorter than what I normally carry. Now the handle is FRN. It's bidirectional FRN, and I found it to be reasonably grippy. Would you prefer the G10? Probably, but I don't think it's the end of the world. And for the purpose that I had for this knife, I wanted it to be as light as possible. Because remember, I'm carrying this often with something else. So just FRN is good. And I may have already mentioned, but there are no liners here. It's just FRN. That does reduce the weight quite a bit. And if I didn't mention that before, the weight is only 2.6 ounces. I maybe only gave you the dimensions, but the weight on this is 2.6 ounces, so very, very light. It is a lockback. You could see that right away. And it is featuring the Andrew Boyd dent. Now, the pivot is one of the things that I'm not crazy about. It's riveted rather than a torque screw. I wish there was a torque screw here, but it's not the end of the world. I don't see this as a super hard use knife, so I don't anticipate putting a lot of strain and stress on that pivot, especially considering that most of the time when I'm using this knife, in fact, like 90% of the time, I'm holding it in this configuration, which is actually adding a little bit of strength and stability to that point, that pivot point, and kind of protecting it a little bit. So yeah, I'm not a fan of that. I wish it was a typical Torx pit construction like we're used to. Pocket clip and lanyard hole are kind of combined in a strange way here. You can see that there's this screw here that goes through that does allow for a lanyard, but it would have to be a small one, and holds the pocket clip on. The pocket clip itself is a fairly typical Spyderco clip in terms of this part. However, as you can see, this end is missing those typical 3 screws that we're so used to seeing. Because of that, it's actually easier. You can just use a dime or a slot screwdriver or whatever to take that out and move the clip over to this side. And it is, let's see if you can see that. You can see that it is recessed on both sides so that clip stays flush with the handle. This is not a knife you're going to be taking apart. Even this you can see is a rivet going through. But overall, this is a really good knife. I've been totally impressed. It's very comfortable. It's very ergonomic. I mentioned a second ago, I believe, if I didn't, it must have been just something I intended to mention. But it was designed around the human hand, and it is extremely comfortable. And I've really enjoyed carrying this knife. And really, really glad to have it in my collection. If you're looking for one EDC knife to carry around, this is a big win. Now, you may want to step up to the G10 version. That would be the Spyderco Native 5, I guess. And that comes in a couple of different variations. I'm very impressed with the FRN version. I really, really enjoy it, and I'm totally happy with it. So even if you want to go with that cheaper option, I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's extremely good in terms of cutting power and comfort, and the blade steel, of course, is S30V. So you're getting a really, really high-end blade steel as well in what is generally a reasonably priced knife. You can find these for, you know, less than, you know, probably around the $70 mark, which I think is a decent deal. Probably comparable to, I will say this, I'm not a huge fan of the Delica. This is similar in size though, but I really, really like it much more in its design, its functionality. I prefer it by a long shot to the Delica. And so I feel like it's sort of in that similar size and weight. And I've got to say, I definitely give this knife 2 thumbs way up, with the exception of, you know, there are a couple little things here that I wasn't crazy about, but you need to know that there are versions of this knife that don't have those things. So if you feel like, yeah, I really can't live with that riveted pivot, there are variations on this knife that don't have it. I would like to say one thing. If anyone from Spyderco ever watches this, or maybe if you'd all like to go on Spyderco forums and suggest this knife in a larger size would be awesome. If you could make this, you know, with a 4-inch blade, that would be really, really cool, and that would definitely be a knife to add to a collection. All right, there you go. That's my take on the Spyderco Native. Very, very nice blade. Really, really enjoy it. Talk to you later, YouTube.